The film opens with a tense atmosphere at Narita Airport, Japan in 2009, where a group of armed robbers successfully hijacked a plane that had just landed. At the same time, outside the plane, special forces were on standby, ready to attack at any moment. In the plane's cabin, the passengers were utterly terrified as they hugged each other and cried, but there was one woman who looked completely calm. She was Jill. While everyone was in full panic mode, she somehow looked as calm as a cucumber. At that moment, she had just woken up, and as she stretched her body, she made a loud noise. The passengers beside her tried to tell her to lower her voice, afraid that the hijackers would be mad. But it was too late, because soon after, one of the hijackers approached and pointed his gun at Jill while telling her to tone it down. Surprisingly, despite the barrel of the gun in front of her eyes, Jill didn't show the slightest fear. Instead, with a straight face, she scolded the hijackers as if she was reprimanding naughty students in her class. Shortly after, tensions escalated as gunshots were heard inside the plane. That signaled the police forces outside the plane to attack, hoping to save the remaining passenger. But something shocking happened when they approached the plane. The door suddenly opened, and the hijackers jumped out of the plane looking terrified. They were completely shocked when they found that the hijackers had been utterly defeated by Jill, all alone. Following that, her bravery and incredible fighting stunts were broadcast live on television, and in an instant, she became a celebrity all across Japan. Back at home, Jill was welcomed by her family with pride. They visibly expressed how much they admired her heroic actions to save the plane and its passengers from the hijackers. From here, it was revealed that Jill turned out to be no ordinary woman, as she came from a large and very influential Yakuza family. But behind her frightening background, it turns out that she had worked for the past 7 years as a mathematics teacher at a high school, all while carefully hiding her identity as a part of the Yakuza family from both her students and her colleagues. The next day, when Jill arrived at school, she saw the other teachers discussing her heroic act of rescuing the plane on the news. Not long after, the principal came and immediately stopped their conversation. He then dragged her and lowered his voice when he advised her not to draw too much public attention to herself, as it could easily reveal her true identity. Jill, knowing the problem that might happen if that happened, immediately apologized and promised that such a thing would not happen again. Suddenly, their conversation stopped when a new intern teacher arrived. He was Mark, who turned out to be Jill's former student. Upon seeing him, Jill was clearly very happy because one of her students had decided to follow in her footsteps to become a teacher. She then brought Mark to class to introduce him to the students. However, the students did not respect him at all and instead ignored them. Seeing this, Jill shouted to get their attention, but they didn't back down and instead challenged her. And even one of them tried to hurt her with a tennis ball. However, Jill evaded the ball and it bounced back to the boy. After that, Jill took the initiative to invite her students to the field so they could get to know Mark better. However, not a single student came, which left her annoyed and disappointed. Meanwhile, on the school roof, 5 students were seen looking at the two. Their leader was a student named Ben. There, they were discussing Mark, who suddenly returned to school as a teacher, even though he was previously a delinquent student. Later, after school at a local restaurant, Jill's former students, who had now graduated, gathered at a restaurant and were talking about how they had just seen Jill with a man. They were shocked because they never expected Jill to have a partner, thinking the man was her boyfriend. Suddenly, while they were still arguing about the man, Jill came in with the man in question, who turned out to be Mark, for lunch. There, Jill introduced Mark as a new teacher at her school and cleared the misunderstanding. After that, they all decided to eat together. While eating, they happily told each other about their lives after graduating from school. Then, the scene moves to Ben and his friends, who were hanging out casually on the side of the road. As they chatted there, suddenly, 3 gang members came and tried to mug them for their money. Upon seeing this, Ben quickly protected his friends and warned the gang not to bother them. That evening, Jill invited Mark to her house for dinner. There, she introduced him to all the members of her extended family and excitedly said that she had long dreamed of being able to invite one of her students to eat and have fun together at her home. Fortunately, her family accepted Mark, and they had a nice dinner together. That night, the dinner continued with drinking, and Jill, who had too much alcohol, ended up getting drunk. After she passed out, Mark chatted with Jill's grandfather and revealed that Jill was the main reason why he had decided to become a teacher. Although she was sometimes annoying, she had taught him many valuable lessons about life and truly inspired him to work hard to educate people like her. The next day, on her way to school, Jill unexpectedly met two of her former students who were once known to be troublemakers and was surprised to find out that now both of them had become successful and very respectable people. Not long after, her attention was drawn to a man who was giving a speech nearby. As she got closer, she realized that the man's face was very similar to her ex-boyfriend's. It was revealed that the man's name was Danny, and he was the owner of the largest IT company in Japan. He was running for governor at that moment and had clear ambitions to expand his influence. Seeing the man, Jill was immediately captivated and enthusiastically expressed her support for the man's campaign. Meanwhile, at the school, a motorcycle gang arrived suddenly. As they stopped in front of the students, they introduced themselves as members of a notorious gang called the Black Skull, who came to take revenge on Ben for beating his friends. Seeing the fearsome gang members, the teachers became panicked and scared, while the principal, who looked scared the most, immediately called the police for help. Fortunately, upon hearing that the police were on their way to the location, the gang members decided to retreat, but they swore to return for revenge. After the incident, the principal called Ben and his friends to his office and scolded them for causing chaos at school, knowing it was their doing that brought the problem. He demanded an explanation, and the students explained that it was the motorcycle gang that had started the fight because they were trying to mug them. However, the principal did not believe that reason at all. Finally, Jill intervened and convinced the principal that her students were telling the truth after she looked at their faces. She emphasized that she knew when her students were lying and when they were being honest. Fortunately, upon hearing her explanation, the principal finally decided to close the matter, but he warned Jill that if her students caused any further trouble in the future, she would be fired immediately. Sometime later in class, Ben and his friends were shocked when they found out that Jill had put her job on the line for them. Upon knowing this, not wanting to keep getting his teacher into trouble, Ben decided to settle things with the biker gang himself. His friends tried hard to stop him and warned him that the Black Skull was extremely dangerous and that he was only causing more trouble for their teacher, but Ben remained stubborn and left alone. Shortly after, Jill came to class with Mark and found out that Ben had gone to confront the Black Skull. When she knew that none of them tried to stop him and just let him go alone, she became so disappointed in them. After reprimanding them, she decided to immediately look for Ben. Sometime later, Ben had arrived at the Black Skull Gang headquarters and bravely warned them to stay away from his school. He even went as far as challenging the gang leader to a one-on-one fight. But as his friends warned him, the gang refused to face him manly and instead ganged up on him and beat him brutally. Fortunately, moments later, an explosion suddenly shook the building and part of the wall collapsed, leaving a large hole in the wall. Then, from the cloud of dust came Jill, and she immediately ordered the gang to release her student. But instead of complying, the gangsters attacked her. However, with extraordinary courage, Jill fought them one by one. She used every last bit of her strength she had to take down her opponents. But because there were simply too many of them, she finally got overwhelmed and got pinned down. Fortunately, when the situation seemed hopeless, Mark suddenly came to the rescue. The two of them then fought together and managed to defeat all the gangsters until they ran away in fear. Soon after, Ben's friends came and thanked Jill for her bravery. They also apologized to Ben for letting him go alone to confront the gang members. Confused, Ben asked Jill how a mere teacher like her could fight so well, and Jill answered firmly that she could fight because she cared deeply about her students. The next day, Ben started treating Jill with more respect. He even greeted her kindly in the morning when they met. Seeing this change, Jill felt very happy because her students were finally starting to respect and trust her. But on the same day, some police suddenly came to the school. Knowing that, Jill panicked, thinking that their arrival was related to the fight that had happened last night with the Black Skull. But she was wrong because the police were there because one of the students, named Tom, was suspected of being involved in a drug trafficking case. When they heard about it, the teachers immediately defended Tom, saying that he was a good student and would never have been involved in something like that. However, the police said that their suspicion was not without reason. They explained that Tom's wallet was found at the scene of the crime, and he had not been seen since the previous night. Jill refused to believe that Tom was guilty, despite the explanation. She believed there was another reason behind all this and decided to find it out before the police found Tom. In short, while searching for Tom, Jill met a group of people who turned out to be Tom's friends and were also looking for him. Then, to find Tom faster, they quickly split up and spent the whole day searching for Tom, but to no avail. Meanwhile, on another part of the city, Tom was walking with his body wounded and limping when he suddenly received a call from Jill. However, for some reason, he hesitated and chose not to answer. He then continued his way, but when he saw a police car passing by, he panicked and immediately hid under the flyover. That same night, Mark, who was walking around school, heard a strange sound coming from one of the classrooms. When he checked, it turned out that Tom was hiding there, so he quickly informed Jill about it. A few moments later, Jill arrived with the other students, looking pretty worried. She then asked Tom why he refused to pick up her call. Tom explained that he didn't want her to get involved in this complicated matter. He then explained that some time ago, he got a job as a delivery man without knowing the actual contents of the package he was sending. But the night before, when he gave the package, one of them fell and broke, revealing that the contents were drugs. When he saw that, he was scared and wanted to quit the job, but his boss beat him instead. He only managed to escape because the police suddenly arrived, but unfortunately his wallet was accidentally left at the scene, which led the police to find it and suspect him guilty. After hearing that explanation, Jill asked Tom why he was working that kind of job. With sadness clear on his face, Tom replied that he did that to help provide for his siblings. When she heard that reason, she was instantly convinced that he was innocent and offered him a safe place to hide from the police. Later, upon arriving home, Jill asked her brothers to investigate who was behind the drug business, and it didn't take long for them to discover that the mastermind behind all this was Danny, the wealthy businessman who was running for governor. They explained that due to his extensive power and connections, it would be very difficult to bring him to justice. Jill was furious to hear that and vowed to reveal all of Danny's rottenness to the public. But unbeknownst to her, Tom and his friends, who overheard the conversation, decided to take action on their own. They wanted to protect Jill from harm, so they decided to search for evidence at Danny's headquarters themselves. The next day, Tom and his friends snuck into Danny's building to look for evidence. At the same time, Jill and Mark also headed there. Upon arrival, they saw some journalists preparing to cover Danny's political campaign. Meanwhile, Tom and his friends finally found a room filled with boxes filled to the brim with drugs. But unfortunately, Danny's men quickly came in and caught them. The guards immediately drew their guns ready to shoot, but at that crucial moment, Jill suddenly appeared and paralyzed all the guards with incredible force. At the same time, Danny was giving a campaign speech that was broadcast live on national television. In his speech, he promised to advance the city if he was elected governor. But suddenly, in the middle of his speech, Jill went up on stage and revealed all the crimes that he had committed in front of the camera. It didn't stop there. To give proof to the public, the students broadcast live the exact location where all the drugs were hidden. Upon seeing this, the journalists and audiences there scattered to leave in panic. On the other hand, Danny was furious and ordered his men to attack Jill. Outside the building, special forces were already standing by, ready to ambush the corrupt politician. At the same time, Ben and his friends tried to enter, but were blocked by the police. Jill fought alone against many of the enemies and managed to defeat all of them. Seeing this, Danny quickly pointed his gun at Jill and shouted that she had ruined his life. But calmly, Jill asked him to give up and said that it was never too late to start a new life. And surprisingly, Danny was convinced. He finally lowered his weapon and surrendered. Moments later, the police entered the building and prepared to arrest Danny, but Jill asked them not to shoot him because he had already surrendered. After that, Danny was taken out safely, leaving the whole country amazed by Jill's courage. The next day, Jill became a very famous figure. She was praised by teachers, students, and even the principal for her courage, and also by the Japanese people. Later in class, she invited her students to play on the field. At first, everyone was just silent, but after Ben started running, all the students followed.